How happy does evolution want us to be? This is an attempt to get a better understanding of happiness, the nature of happiness, not how do I get to be more successful or what are tonight's winning lottery numbers, but more like how does happiness work? What's the purpose of happiness? If we can get a better understanding of how happiness works from a biological point of view, we might have a better chance of understanding whether we're going the right way about trying to get happier, or indeed whether it's possible to get any happier at all. We're brought up with the idea that happiness is achievable. We're taught that if we work hard at school, if we have a great family, if we earn money and the respect of the community, we'll be happy. It's what happily ever after is all about. Every fairy story we heard as a child was based on this simple assumption. And yet, one of the world's most popular religions was formed 2,500 years ago by a man that wasn't convinced. Buddha was an Indian prince. According to legend, he was a wealthy and important man, but it didn't make him content. In search of more out of his life, he sat down under a tree to try and work out what was wrong. After much sitting, he finally came to the conclusion that life is inherently unsatisfactory. Whatever you achieve, whatever you have in life, be it material possessions, love, family, respect of people around you, it's never going to be enough to make you content. This is a bit shocking to the 21st century Western mind. The thought that millions of people base their spiritual beliefs on the idea that getting what you want won't satisfy your desires seems somewhat bizarre. Could it be true? Born 2,500 years ago, Buddha had very little scientific knowledge to help him with his deliberations. Although he had an observation, he didn't have an explanation. So what can more than 2 millennia of science add to Buddha's observation? Could it be human nature that we're never satisfied? Not in an old wives' tale kind of way, but in a biological way. Could it be human nature in the same way that it's a lion's nature to kill antelopes? If so, would that mean that there's a scientific explanation for why the grass is always greener? A scientific explanation for why life is inherently unsatisfactory? How our instincts mislead us about happiness. We know that feelings aren't simply automatic results of what's going on in the world around us. They're actually mechanisms to control our behavior, mechanisms used to make us do things that will increase the survival chances of our genes. So if happiness is a mechanism rather than an automatic result, where does that leave our chances of living happily ever after? We'll consider 2 personal experiences that show us how our instincts mislead us about the way happiness works. Then we'll see whether these observations, combined with what we know about evolution, can improve our understanding of happiness. Personal experience number 1, the pleasure fader. There's a man in Canada who only listens to one song. It's by Johnny Cash, but that's not important. What is important is that, unlike the rest of us, the man doesn't get bored with this one song. He just plays it over and over again. And his friends say to him, "How can you possibly play the same thing over and over again, Bill?" Bill just smiles and says, "How come you can't?" Okay, he's fictional, because that's frankly inhuman. However good the music, however talented the performer, to be able to listen to just one song over and over, it's not normal. But why do we get bored? Nothing changes in the music, we don't wear it out by overplaying it. Nothing changes in the way the sound waves hit our eardrums. And yet we get bored. For some reason, our own brain decides to take pleasure away from us and make us go out and buy another song, exactly like the music industry wants us to do. And it all seems so normal. That's just the way it is. Personal experience number 2, the expectation adjuster. 2 men receive a $5,000 bonus. One flips burgers, the other works on Wall Street. Mr. Burger is delighted with his $5,000, whilst Mr. Wall Street is mortified. Last year his bonus was $200,000. Their reactions are entirely dependent on their expectations. They both experience the same event. One brain converts the information into delight, while the other brain gets misery. And it all seems so normal. Of course Mr. Wall Street should be upset with his $5,000. He's worth much more. But hold on, surely success should make us happier. Shouldn't Mr. Wall Street feel equally happy with $5,000 as Mr. Burger does? And if he gets the $200,000, then he can be even happier. But of course, it doesn't work that way. If we think we're capable of a big bonus, we get upset if we don't get it. Our brains adjust our expectations, and we only get to feel good if we exceed those expectations. We know the pleasure fader and the expectation adjuster so well that we don't even question them. They are so much a part of our lives that we blame the world we live in and not the world inside our heads. Yet without these devices, think how wonderful, how perfect our lives would be. So what's the purpose of the pleasure fader and the expectation adjuster? Until we realize that we're genetic slaves, we don't even look for an explanation. We blame the world we live in. But the world we live in isn't responsible for how we feel. It's our evolutionary programmed minds. So would it make sense that evolution should have created the pleasure fader and the expectation adjuster? Imagine your evolution. You've been working hard for the last few billion years and recently launched your greatest creation so far, Mr. Homo sapiens. Things are going well. Your new machine is beginning to throw its weight around the planet to great effect. With his new agriculture project, food shortages are rarely a problem. With his new tools, he's successfully defending himself against all the nasty animals that are trying to eat him. With his newfound ability to harness fire, it's warm and cozy at night, and he's learning how to cook. Indeed, your new creation is becoming so successful that his circuits are overloading with feel-good chemicals. It's one big holiday for Mr. Sapiens. He's working an hour or two a day, and the rest is, well, sitting around smiling. He's gone from wanting to having, and it's changed everything. The state of mind that made him get things done, take risks, push for results, has gone. He's lost his motivation, which means there are problems coming. Surviving in the natural world is like surviving in business. However successful you might already be, there's always someone trying to steal your market. If you sit back, holding on to your old methods, your old prices and your old technology, pretty soon some young upstart is going to start offering a cheaper, faster, greener service. In business, you don't have time to enjoy your past successes. And it's the same in the natural world. There's always some other animal trying to take your food. There's always a distant relative trying to steal your mate. So if you're evolution and you're trying to program your machine to be as successful as possible, it looks like you need a rethink. You motivated your new machine so that it would work hard in pursuit of happiness, but you didn't work out what was going to happen when it got happy. How do you make sure that your favorite creation is always pushing for more? How do you make sure that happiness doesn't take away his desire to succeed, his desire to improve things? And how do you program the machine so that it will always achieve the maximum that it's capable of achieving? Firstly, you've got to make the pleasure fade. And secondly, and just as importantly, you've got to make those little dog biscuits of pleasure relative to previous achievements. You can't be congratulating a child that's just crawled across the room if it's already capable of walking. Your machine can't feel good whenever the situation is good. It can only feel good when the situation gets better. The expectation adjuster on the golf course. What makes a sport like golf endlessly entertaining? Is it that there's always a chance to improve? A continual challenge, no matter how good you are, you can always get better. Which is, of course, where the satisfaction comes from, when you play better than you thought you were capable of. And even though you keep thinking, if I could just sort out my putting, I'd have this game mastered. You've been thinking that for years. You've got a lot better, but there's always more better to get. And fantastic golfers are no happier with their game than good golfers. Everyone gets to feel good relative to how much they're improving, not to how good they actually are. A game that's equally absorbing for the beginner and the expert, and equally frustrating. If you don't play as well as expected, you feel the pain of failure. And there are no freebies. Unless you're upset when you lose, you don't get pleasure when you win. In golf, you're not playing your opponent, you're playing yourself. Or rather, you're playing your evolutionary programmed expectation adjuster. And golf is like life. Everything we do in life is subject to an adjustment of our expectations. From the bones at work to how we feel when we look in the mirror, satisfaction and contentment are dependent on our expectations. Such a simple solution, such a simple device to make sure the robot is always achieving the most that it's capable of. How else could evolution have set us up? Evolution didn't know whether we were going to be born in a penthouse on Fifth Avenue or a slum in the third world. Evolution didn't know whether we were going to find a life, a complete breeze, or whether it would be like walking into a force 10 headwind. So it had to come up with a mechanism to keep us motivated regardless of our situation. And what could it do other than simply ignore our actual situation and consider instead only whether or not our situation was improving? Situation in life is improving, evolution rewards you. If your situation in life is falling, evolution punishes you. Imagine you lived 100 years ago. You get up in the morning and it's cold. The central heating must be broken. But of course there isn't any central heating. There's also no hot shower. Never mind, once you get into the car, you'll warm up and it'll be nice and cozy at work. But of course there's no car and you've got to walk to work, and there's no warmer at work because you work in a field. The only thing left to look forward to is getting home and putting your feet up in front of the TV. Most of the things we take for granted in the 21st century didn't even exist 100 years ago. Can you imagine a life without cars, TV, good hospitals, fridges, fast food? It's almost impossible to believe that so many of the things that we rely on for our happiness today weren't available at all to our great-grandfathers. But did that mean that they were miserable all day? Did that mean that their lives were barely livable? Or were they just as happy as we are? What have we gained with our relentless pursuit of improvement? We live longer for sure, but are we happier? Do we need this expectation adjuster that seems to affect everything we do, everything we dream of? Wouldn't we be so much better off without it? Unfortunately, the expectation adjuster has never been programmed out of us, so we keep on building faster cars, taller skyscrapers, smarter mobile phones, all in an endless attempt to get more satisfaction than we got when we were cavemen. Humans have taken over the world, but we're no happier than our caveman ancestors. We live longer, but our lives are no more satisfying, stress-free, or enjoyable, because our genes don't want us to be happy. Our genes want us pushing hard every day to maximize their survival chances. Whether we survive is less important, and whether we're happy or not is entirely irrelevant. Happiness isn't the reward for a life well lived. It's the mechanism used to control our choices.